Former WWE head writer Vince Russo has fired shots at Paul Heyman. He spoke about Heyman's latest appearance on SmackDown. Russo has had his fair share of controversies in pro wrestling. He was also involved in some questionable storylines during his WCW tenure. Meanwhile, the Wiseman is going through his own set of problems, dealing with Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline. On Sportskeeda Wrestling's Legion of Raw, Vince Russo mentioned that Paul Heyman was too over the top as an on-screen character. He rubbished comments about the Wiseman being a method actor. The former writer detailed how he had gone without sleeping for a day, but never looked as bad as Heyman. Russo felt the Hall of Famer's sunken appearance on SmackDown was too dramatic and unnecessary. To me, Paul Heyman is just so over the top. I gotta tell you. A lot of people give him credit for he wanted to be a character actor, so I guess he didn't sleep or something, and he didn't shave and his eyes were all red. I gotta tell you something honestly, I've gone 24 hours without sleeping. I've not looked as hideous as that. From 10:45 onwards, this past week, the Bloodline Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Jacob Fatu put Paul Heyman through the announce desk. This was after the Wiseman refused to acknowledge Sikoa as the new tribal chief. EC3 believes Goldberg could face a former WWE Intercontinental Champion someday. You can check out his full comments in the exclusive interview below. The locker room was buzzing after the latest Monday Night Raw. The crowd's roars had faded, replaced by the quiet hum of backstage chatter. Among the myriad of emotions swirling in the air, excitement, exhaustion, satisfaction, there was one unmistakable feeling: tension. That tension had a name, and it was Paul Heyman. The show had ended on a high note, with fans still electrified by the night's main event. However, as the superstars retreated to the sanctuary of their dressing rooms, one figure was visibly agitated. Enter Jason the Maverick Matthews, a wrestling personality as notorious for his backstage antics as his in-ring prowess. Tonight, he was seething, and his target was none other than Paul Heyman. Matthews had a reputation for speaking his mind, often too candidly. Known for his controversial opinions and brash demeanor, he was both loved and loathed by fans and colleagues alike. After Monday Night Raw, Matthews stormed into the media room, demanding the attention of the assembled press. What followed was an epic rant that would soon send shockwaves through the wrestling community. "All right, everyone, listen up." Matthews' voice boomed, commanding immediate silence. "I'm done. I've had it with Paul Heyman and his so-called genius behind the scenes. Tonight was the last straw." The journalists, always eager for a headline, leaned in closer, their pens and recorders at the ready. Matthews continued, his face flushed with anger. "Heyman struts around here like he's the king of wrestling, like he invented this business. But let me tell you something, he's nothing but a snake oil salesman, a con artist who's been getting away with his crap for far too long." There was a collective intake of breath. Matthews was known for his bluntness, but this was a new level of audacity, even for him. "I've been in this business for over a decade," Matthews spat, "and I've seen a lot of things. But what Heyman did tonight was a betrayal to every single one of us who puts our bodies on the line night after night." Matthews was referring to the closing segment of Raw, where Heyman, in his role as the mouthpiece for the current champion, had orchestrated a controversial finish that left many wrestlers and fans disgruntled. The details were still murky, but it was clear that Matthews felt personally affronted. He talks about advocating for his clients, but what he's really doing is manipulating outcomes to suit his own narrative. He's not about elevating talent, he's about pushing his own agenda at the expense of everyone else. The room was silent, the only sound the frantic scribbling of pens. Matthews' tirade was far from over. "You know what Heyman really is? He's a relic. A man stuck in the past, trying to relive his glory days by clinging to power in any way he can. He surrounds himself with sycophants who are too afraid to call him out on his BS. Well, I'm not afraid." Matthews paused, taking a breath, his chest heaving. "I've worked with the best in this industry, and I've seen what true leadership looks like. It's about respect, about lifting each other up, not tearing people down to build yourself up. Heyman has lost sight of that, if he ever had it to begin with. The journalists exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others looking skeptical. Matthews had always been a polarizing figure, but his words resonated with an undeniable truth. And let's talk about his so-called wisdom. Heyman thinks he's a master strategist, but all he does is rehash the same tired tropes over and over. The underdog story, the evil manager, it's played out. The fans deserve better, and so do we. Matthews' voice softened, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his fury. We're out there every night, giving it our all, and we deserve someone who respects that. Not someone who sees us as pawns in his twisted game. There was a pause, a moment of silence that felt like an eternity. Matthews had said his piece, and now the weight of his words hung in the air. Just then, the door to the media room opened, and in walked Paul Heyman himself, a smirk playing on his lips. The room collectively held its breath, awaiting the inevitable confrontation. "Jason," Heyman said, his voice dripping with condescension, "I appreciate your passion. Truly, I do. But let's be clear about something. This business is about survival, about doing whatever it takes to stay on top. If you can't handle that, maybe you're in the wrong industry." Matthews squared his shoulders, meeting Heyman's gaze with a steely resolve. "You're right, Paul. It is about survival. And it's about time someone stood up to you. So here I am." Heyman chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You think you can take me down? Go ahead, try. But remember, I've seen them come and I've seen them go. You're just another name on the list." With that, Heyman turned and walked out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Matthews watched him go, his jaw set in determination. "Well," he said, turning back to the press, "I guess you all have your headline. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." As Matthews left the room, the journalists quickly began filing their stories, knowing they had witnessed the beginning of what would surely be one of the most talked-about feuds in wrestling history. The Maverick had thrown down the gauntlet, and the wrestling world was about to get a whole lot more interesting.